Welcome to San Joaquin Spotlight, a public affairs program featuring conversations about life in the central San Joaquin Valley. This program is brought to you in partnership between KFSR 90.7 FM and CMAC Fresno. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Today we're going to be talking about transit with Christine Barker. Christine is with the BHC Flare Together. Christine, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, we hear the word BHC or the letters BHC all the time. I see it in the media, I read about it. What does it stand for?
BHC stands for Building Healthy Communities, which is a 10-year initiative from the California Endowment, really focusing on 14 specific places throughout the state of California that have disproportionate rates of health issues and also concentrated poverty.
So we're one of these 14.
We are.
How long has BHC been around, do you think?
So the 10-year initiative started 3 years ago, and there were a couple years of planning processes before that. So we still have 7 more years to make substantial change in health outcomes for our city.
And then you're a part of BHC, but you're a part of this Flare Together?
Yes. So I work with a coalition of 6 agency partners and hundreds of community residents, and we formed a team that we call Flare Together, Fresno Leaders Advocating for Regional Equity Together.
Wow, that's a long one, but...
It is, but FLARE for short. We work with 6 different agencies: Centro La Familia, Centro Binacional para el Desarrollo Indígena Oaxaqueño, or CBDIO for short, Faith and Community, Fresno Metro Ministry, Fresno Interdenominational Refugee Ministries, and West Fresno Family Resource Center.
So but who's your employer? Is it FIRM?
I work at FIRM, yeah, and
So
I coordinate this team of 6 agencies.
And these community members.
And hundreds of community members.
So is it passionate at these meetings? Because, you know, I know when I bring meetings with hundreds of people in the community, it kind of gets passionate in there. And how are those meetings?
You know, I think it's incredibly empowering for a lot of people to be heard by their government and by their government representatives. So we always make sure that people know what's going on before they show up, and that that if people want to talk, that they feel comfortable practicing it a couple times. You know, I was driving someone home the other night after the BRT hearing, which we'll talk more about later.
Yes, I'm interested to learn about that.
And, you know, she just turned to me and said, these people, like, they sit up there and they vote, but they don't know what it's like to ride the bus. They've never waited for a bus for 30 minutes. They vote, but they don't know. And I think that's incredibly powerful and incredibly profound, and that gives me inspiration and passion to keep doing what we do.
So I'm going to be the people that say, community members, they don't care about what's going on. I mean, they don't come to meetings. It's all volunteer. What do you have to say?
They come to meetings. Let me tell you, they come to meetings as long as they feel invited and they feel welcomed, and as when people feel heard, that's an incredibly empowering experience. And so it's kind of addicting, I think. Going and speaking before council and watching them nod their heads and connect with you, that is an incredibly empowering experience. And we've seen that as we become more and more involved, people begin to put a higher and higher priority in participating in politics. So next time you come to City Hall, you have to call me. You have to call me. Okay.
Talk about, just in general, are you finding that there are a lot of people who really don't understand how the political world works, how city council works, how and why they vote up there? I mean,
yeah.
It's got to be like that, because when I was younger, I didn't understand what city council did either.
Right. It's a whole nother system. It's a whole nother kind of set of vocabulary. It's a whole different way of thinking about the world. But again, I go back to, like, when people feel welcome to participate, then they're happy to be heard. So there's a lot of learning, and some people like only know City Hall because that's where they pay their water bills, but seeing council in action, hearing what they have to say, and speaking with them afterwards works.
Talk about FIRM a little bit, because I've been there. I've been to classes there. I've helped teach classes there. This is a diverse population. Talk about FIRM.
So FIRM stands for Fresno Interdenominational Refugee Ministries. It was founded in 1994 as a collaborative model of churches and newly arrived refugee communities trying to figure out how they can help one another. And so originally, our founder, Sharon Stanley, started it almost as like a coordinating role because so many people were trying to help Hmong and Lao and Slavic refugee families as they were coming in, but it was really chaotic and needed some coordination.
Which, by the way, Reverend Stanley is no longer in Fresno. We lost her to where?
We lost her to Washington, D.C.
How could she go to Washington, D.C.?
No. She's now the National Director for the Refugee and Immigration Ministries for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ denomination. So,
wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Good for her.
She's advocating for immigrant rights and pathway to citizenship and doing a lot of great work.
Are these community groups working, in your opinion, are they working together efficiently?
I think we do a great job. We have 6 different agencies, like I said before. We have generally like 5 languages represented at each of our community meetings. And we always start with food. We always start with sharing culture and getting to know one another across language barriers. But the trust that's built over time is really, really amazing and essential for making the city a better place.
Now, let's talk a little bit about transportation.
Mm-hmm.
What happened recently that people started, some got upset, some were for it. I mean, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard the fors and I've heard the against.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us what happened.
So back in 2009, under the Alan Autry administration, the city of Fresno applied for a competitive grant from the federal government under a program called Small Starts. And miracle of miracles, Fresno actually won it. And it was $38 million to implement what's called a bus rapid transit system. And so Fresno was competing against all these other cities that also wanted bus rapid transit systems. And Fresno's grant proposal won.
It actually won.
It actually won.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've worked with grants much, but in my nonprofit world, we work with grants a lot. And when you write a grant for something, you have to spend the money on what you said you were going to do with your proposal. So the city of Fresno has been working, getting around $15 million in other grant sources from state and other federal sources to kind of supplement that so that there would be no money coming out of the general fund and no Measure C local tax dollars.
But it wasn't going to cost us anything.
It wasn't going to cost us anything. Okay. Nothing was going to come out of our local taxes except for the money that we pay every year to the federal government that usually goes to other cities with better transit.
So we get the money.
So we get the money. And our city council starts the process and they vote for it, they vote for it, they vote for it.
But how long ago was that? Was that a different council or was it the current council?
So I think everyone except for Brandau and Capriolio have voted for it multiple times.
Okay.
So Brandau and Capriolio just came onto council in January, right? And so they haven't voted for it yet, but everyone else has. But starting 4 or 5 months ago, Clint Olivier started drumming up some concerns that he had, and the support for BRT has kind of eroded slowly after the last couple months, and was very apparent on January 30th when, although the council voted 7-0 to accept to certify the environmental documentation called a mitigated negative declaration. And then when it came to the next step, which was to finish the design and also to hire a project management firm, they voted 3-4. So 4 against, 3 to continue the project. And now the project's kind of in limbo. We haven't sent the money back to the feds, but we also have a really short time frame in order to move forward. And any modifications that we do to the design could compromise our grants with the federal government.
So what was the project? What was the money for?
So it was for a bus system that goes on Blackstone and Ventura Kings Canyon all the way from River Park down through downtown and then out to Clovis Avenue on Ventura Kings Canyon. And the project calls for half-mile spaced, distinct bus stations that are raised with, we have a picture, yeah. So the platforms are actually raised 14 inches. There's a ticket machine, so you can buy your ticket ahead of time, and you don't have to wait for people to like count their change out of their pockets. Since the platform's raised, the bus would be able to be level with the platform, so anyone who uses wheels, whether it's a wheelchair or bicycle,
just wheel in.
They just roll right on, and there's no beep, 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 beep.
And so this is what an actual station would look like?
This is the preliminary design. Yeah, this is the design that was selected by the public to be implemented.
It looks kind of futuristic. I mean, it looks like something I would find in like San Francisco or somewhere like that.
Right, kind of modern, kind of different. I also want to point out that it's got shade and it's got lights, and it has a countdown clock, so you know when the next bus is coming.
But why even have this when we have the current bus system called FACS? I mean, I drive around town a lot, and I see those buses pretty regularly. So, I mean, why is this even relevant?
You know, BRT comes every 10 minutes, and studies have shown across the country that with more reliable transit service, people are more likely to use it. The more time that people have to worry about maybe having to wait 30 minutes or maybe being able to catch the bus on time, the more uncertainty there is, the less likely people are to rely on it. So the more reliable you can make your transit system, the more used it will become.
You know, a lot of times people start things and it's great, and then the support for it dies down. On something like this, your opinion, would support grow or would it die down?
You know, on transit cities, or on transit systems in many cities, including Stockton, demand rises with the implementation of this. In Stockton, the ridership doubled within the first 2 years for their first phase of implementation. And then they did phase 2, and demand almost doubled again, and then they did phase 3, and now their 3 routes for bus rapid transit comprise 40% of the total ridership of the whole city of Stockton.
Talk about the price. I mean, you know, because you deal with a lot of nonprofit organizations. I mean, we have people going through some very tough times right now. Do you think people can afford this?
Well, so the ticket is exactly the same. It's $1.25. They have said that the tickets won't be separated because it is just an improvement of the existing FACS system, which we all know needs improvements. And it's really easy to transfer, and all the lines that intersect, they do it at intersections, so it's really easy to just get on the BRT stop. The operating and maintenance costs are covered for the first 3 years. And the city did a really careful job of looking 10 years into the future and trying to figure out what the cost projections will be. Even if there was no increase in ridership, it still wouldn't bankrupt the FACS system.
Let's talk about, now we've talked a little bit about why something like this is good, but to be fair to the opposition, what do people say? Well, what was the argument against this?
So there were a lot of interesting arguments against this. Some groups turned out in numbers to stick it to the Fed and to say, show Obama we don't want his stinky federal money.
So it was
that
more
was some of it.
Towards one person, the president.
And just the feds and the idea of spending taxpayer money on public transportation. Even though we spend federal dollars on streets and highways and all kinds of costs within our city every Thursday.
So in your opinion, were they against the actual system, or were they against spending tax dollars?
Most of the testimonies I heard were very upset about using taxpayer dollars.
Okay.
There were a couple testimonies from car dealerships who surprisingly don't want reliable transportation in Fresno.
Car dealerships?
Car dealerships against the buses. Who would have thought?
That was interesting because, you know, I never thought that there would be car dealerships there. But
they were there. There were 2 of them in particular, and both were worried about the rise of crime in their North Fresno car dealerships if bus rapid transit was more reliable and more people used it. Then they were worried that crime would increase. Okay. Which had some implications beyond which I'm really going to talk about right now. There were some other people who were there who said that because the bus stops are further apart, they're a half mile apart instead of a quarter mile apart, that we should be thinking about people who have to walk, and they would
Which that makes...
Which makes sense. But I've conducted an informal poll since then, and I have asked everyone that I've talked to about this, would you rather walk 5 to 7 minutes more to wait in the shade in 108-degree heat, or would you rather stand next to a pole? Because that's really the option. We can't use this money for improving the system for every stop there is. Like, we can either do it in a way that's a more rapid system, which has better amenities at the stops, or we can send the money back.
And the council, they voted no, and talk about what they voted for that night, because some people think it's canned, it's over, and then there's others who say, you know what, there's still hope.
Yeah, so there is still hope. Do not be afraid. There's still hope. The environmental papers went through, and so that won't be held up, but it just didn't take the next step. So it is going to be returning to council for the next step, and we're not sure which of the 4 votes can be moved or anything, but
how many do you need to move forward with it?
We need 1. We just need 1.
So one more person
One.
that switches sides, and we move forward with it.
Yeah. So if you live in Lee Brand, Paul Capriolio, Clint Olivier, or Steve Randow's district, it would be really great if you could call them and tell them your feelings about bus rapid transit.
You know, and so that night was a long night, I heard. I wasn't there, but I heard it was till morning. Did people still have fire in them on both sides? I mean, remember, San Joaquin Spotlight's a neutral program.
Right, right.
So on both sides of the argument, were people still?
So I think that the bulk of us that were there until 12:30 in the morning were for BRT. There were 2 or 3 people who had vocally gone against it who remained, but there were almost 100 people in the room, and I would say at least 90 of us, and probably more, were for BRT.
What about the argument that this doesn't go far enough? I mean, I live west of 99, and where I go, I looked at the map, and this didn't reach me.
Right.
So why should I be even for this? If it doesn't affect me, then I should say, you know what, let's not do it. What would you say to my argument?
I would say that the city of Fresno was being very fiscally responsible when they applied first for the lines that have the highest ridership. But phase 2 is supposed to take Shaw all the way across, from Clovis all the way west of 99 down into the West Lake project, and then back, and then and then also extend down into West Fresno to the new Veterans Home, and then phase 3 is supposed to be Cedar all the way north to south. So this is really only the beginning, or it could be only the beginning of having a better transit system for everyone.
Will that negatively impact FACS, or do they both work together?
They both work together. It's easy to transfer back and forth. It's the same ticket. And I think that it will improve ridership over time for FACS as well, because the way our system works now, it's on a grid. And so say you have to come, one of the leaders that I work with really closely lives west of 99 on Ashland. And so she has to take the bus all the way across on Ashland, transfer all the way down to Blackstone to the Manchester Transit Center, transfer again, and then come over to Firm. And so that's 3 buses, and that means that's 2 different times that she's spending 10 to 30 minutes waiting at a bus stop for the bus to come. And so if you can speed up the middle part of that journey, that will make her life a little less scheduled.
How much does the ridership on something like this cost? I know it's not, looking at it in the future, if we were to implement this, I mean, are we talking $1, 50 cents? I mean, what do the numbers tell us?
So it costs $1.25 for a ticket with the transfer implied. I know that nationally, ridership only covers about 20% of the price of transit, but I don't know specific local numbers for how much it's going to cost.
Where can, let's say I'm on the fence. I don't know if I want to support this, but I don't know if I'm against it. I mean, it sounds like a good idea. Where can I look? What other cities can I research to try to find something similar to this so that I can say, that's what that 60-foot bus looks like?
So my favorite YouTube video about BRT is about the Stockton bus line. And I think if you just search Stockton BRT, it should be the first thing that comes up. It's called the Metro Express, and you can see the ridership numbers, you can see how the routes work, you can see incredibly full buses. If you want to learn more about the Fresno system, you can just go to the City of Fresno website and go to Transportation Major Projects BRT, and there's a video simulation that's on that website. There's PowerPoints from the city manager, Bruce Rudd. There's a lot of data. That's where I went to with my information and to find information. And when I have questions, I email the project manager, John Downs, john.downs@fresno.gov. He's a really helpful man who will answer any and all questions.
Where was the mayor's stance on this? Was the mayor for it or against it?
The mayor was for it, but that was part of the problem because there are a couple people on council who don't agree with her vision for the city and don't agree with her vision for downtown. And so, yeah.
And talk about economic development. So if we were to implement this bus system, would it help the businesses on the corridor or will it negatively impact them?
It would help them a lot, not only for increasing numbers of people going by their businesses, but also there are certain businesses that are really interested in investing near the bus rapid transit stops, especially for housing. There's a senior housing facility that is thinking about moving to Fresno and developing right next to a BRT spot, which would help the elders have access to all the stores that they need to go to. Also, there are funds called transit-oriented development funds that are statewide grants that currently there aren't very many places in Fresno that qualify for those because they're not dense enough and there's not quality transit near them. So right now it's like only a couple parts of downtown that even qualify for TOD, transit-oriented development funding. And so a lot of those funds are going to San Francisco, going to LA, going to Sacramento, going to all these other areas that have better transit than we do. And so our businesses are really missing out.
So let's take a look at this picture.
Yes.
What's going on here? And I see Flair there, so you know your BHC Flair is on the podium there.
That's right. So we had a press conference about 2 weeks before the vote where a lot of community residents spoke about how they would use the bus, the BRT, how Jur Her is an incredible BHC leader, and she used to live in Stockton, so she shared how the Metro Express in Stockton really made it easy for her to go to school and easy for students to use. We had multiple languages represented, like we always do, and kind of unanimous support for investing in communities that need investment and investing in transit system to make it a better system.
Why do you do what you do? I mean, you know, it could be tough working with, and I know I used to work in a position where I used to bring communities together, I used to bring nonprofits together. There were times where, you know, there was not agreement between them, so you would put in your mediator hat and try to negotiate. I mean, why do you do what you do? Because at times it can get frustrating, although it's more times than not rewarding. There are those times where you say, okay, folks, you got to work together.
Right. Well, I do what I do because I love Fresno and because I love the diversity that's here. I've lived other places and there's no place like home, so I came back to Fresno to try and make it a more inclusive and more equitable place.
Where did you go?
I went to Spokane, Washington.
Okay.
I went to Stellenbosch, South Africa, and then I went to Toronto, Canada.
All those places, and you end up in Fresno. How did you end up back in Fresno?
I got a really sweet job with building healthy communities. I came back just to apply to grad school. I was going to take a year in Fresno to get acclimated to California life, but the work is so engaging and there's an incredible network of advocates and activists here, and I really think now's the time for some significant change.
How can people find out more about BHC and how can people find out about Flair?
So you can search Fresno BHC on Google, and for Flair Together, you can find us on Facebook, Flair Together /Juntos.
Any meetings coming up that community members can go to? I mean, what's next for Flair Together?
So we're really going to keep our eye on the City Council agenda and make sure that we know when the bus rapid transit vote is coming back and that a lot of community members know as well. Some of the most insulting comments from the dais where the City Council people speak were saying that they were voting no because of poor people. So there were a lot of residents who were part of BHC who it really got to them. So,
Are there times where people say, you know what, my vote doesn't count, or my comments don't count, so I'm not going to do it? And how do you break that barrier?
Well, I tell them how many people turned out to vote in their last election, and it was only a couple thousand, depending on what district it was. And so your vote really does count in Fresno. It might not in other places, but it really does in Fresno because we have such low voter turnout. But I also think that sometimes people get discouraged, and when I get discouraged, I just think about this incredible community that's forming and this incredible network that I get to be a part of, and I try and keep everyone else excited about that too.
Is this the only topic, the main topic that is in the forefront, or, you know, we're running out of time, but I would love you to tell our audience members some of the other things that you're fighting for, or some of the other issues that are relevant.
So actually our main focus is the general plan update, which is supposed to direct 45% of future growth to the existing neighborhoods of Fresno. And this is an incredible opportunity to bring investment back instead of always investing in the suburbs, pouring money away for developers to make 50% profit, really investing in the neighborhoods that have been left behind. And so that is a fight that will come soon, and it's going to be really hard, but it's really important. And we also have residents working on neighborhood watches, working with code enforcement, fighting illegal dumping, working with the Fresno Environmental Reporting Network, and working on stuff with their city council people. There's millions of ways to get involved.
And I wish we can talk about all of it, but we are out of time this week on the program. Thank you so much for coming and telling our audience members about this, because, you know, a lot of people think, oh, it's done. Some people think, oh, you know, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I think you kind of helped things a little bit on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
That's all for this edition of San Joaquin Spotlight. Thank you to the volunteer crew that made this and every production possible. Thank you to our guest, Christine, for coming on and telling us a little bit about the bus system. Thank you for our audience members listening on KFSR 90.7 FM. Thank you for watching CMAC. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. See you next week for a new edition.